Good morning, everyone. I apologize. We're a few minutes late starting. Had a few minor things we had to deal with this morning relative to our hearing, so thanks very much. Let me call to order the Senate Redistricting Committee for our hearing today, and we'll begin with prayer. Senator Dolezal, would you please lead us in a prayer?
I will. Please bow your heads. Lord, we thank you for today. Thank you for the opportunity to serve your people of this great state, this great nation. We pray that we do so with grace, wisdom, and integrity. It's your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Well, welcome again, and thank you to the folks that have come to, the folks of the public that have come to attend our hearing, and of course, thank you to all the committee members. This is expected to be our last meeting. It's the last one noticed, so I appreciate your patience and all the work that you have, each member of this committee has put into the redistricting process, which of course goes back to the summer when we traveled the state and did all that we did. You should have a 3-ring binder in front of you instead of a folder. I want to thank Allie Farmer for her good work, not only today in preparing for this hearing, but all that she's done over the last several months of traveling and making preparations and accommodations for us so that we could do the important work of the committee. You should have 2 small green tabs or 2 pages that are tabbed inside your 3-ring folder. It is done this way for completeness so that you have what was in the folder yesterday. You'll see first is the hearing notice dated November 17 for the hearing that was held yesterday at 1:30 p.m. and behind that the bill that I presented as SB 2EX. And then you'll find the second green tab, which is the notice and agenda for today's hearing and the bill and map behind that. So that's why you have what you have in front of you there. So with that, as we discussed yesterday and as is anticipated, Madam Leader, would you like to present your bill?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to present on
Number 9. All right, Madam Chairman, your mic is hot and you have the floor.
Okay, I was wondering if you were colorblind because you said the green tab and ours is orange.
Well, just so you know, mine is green. I don't know about yours. All right.
For the green.
All right. Well, you know, if that's the biggest problem we have today, we're doing all right.
I hope that is the biggest problem.
Yes, ma'am. We're going to agree on everything else, I bet. What do you think, Madam
I
Leader?
think we can agree on 3EX.
well, let's wind it up and see what happens.
All right.
All right. You have the floor. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for allowing me to present this morning. Would you pull the mic a little closer to you? Okay, it's almost in my mouth now. Is that good?
Yes, ma'am.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, can't hear. All right. As Democratic leader of the Georgia State Senate, I recognize that fair maps are crucial to ensuring that every Georgian vote counts equally. Gerrymandering suppresses the voices and votes of the Georgians that it disadvantages. Unfortunately, the congressional proposal offered by the majority and the process by which the majority appears intent on approving it falls a little short of a fair map or a fair and transparent process. Before I turn to discussing the joint proposal by the Senate and House Democratic caucuses as reflected in Senate Bill 3EX, it is first critical to understand the backdrop against which it is offered and against which the entire redistricting process operates. Doing so requires understanding where Georgia is today as a state and who Georgians are today. Population change is certainly the starting point for redistricting. And over the last decade, Georgia's population has grown by 1 million people. But population change is not simply a number. Each of these 1 million people are Georgians, and we cannot ignore who those Georgians are. The entirety of the growth over the last decade is a result of growth in the number of minority residents. The non-Hispanic white population in Georgia declined between 2010 and 2020. As I speak today, Georgia is most likely already a majority minority state. As of April 2020, as measured by the 2020 census, Georgia was only 50.1% non-Hispanic white. Over the last decade and the decade before that, Georgia's growth has been driven by Black, Hispanic, and Asian Georgians and other Georgians of color. The House and Senate redistricting maps passed out of this committee failed to acknowledge that reality. Unfortunately, so does the Congressional proposal the majority offers. Our proposal, however, recognizes the reality of where Georgia is today and who Georgians are today. Georgia has only become incredibly more diverse, but is also more urban than ever before. The majority of states' growth over the last decade has occurred in metro Atlanta. So I would turn to discussing the Democratic proposal, Senate Bill 3EX. And before we discuss individual districts, I want to discuss the proposal as a whole. First, this proposal was released to the public 4 weeks ago on October 21st. This is the first opportunity of this committee has provided for the consideration of this map. The Democratic caucus is proud of the congressional proposal we are presenting today. Quite frankly, it is a stronger and fairer proposal than the map presented by the majority. While some members of this committee have disparaged the nonpartisan analysis put forth by the Princeton Gerrymandering Project, it provides a neutral scorekeeper to assess a proposal's fairness. I'm proud to say the Democratic caucus proposal received an overall B, as well as a B in partisan fairness. The majority's proposal, in contrast, received a C in all categories. The Democratic caucus certainly could have proposed a partisan gerrymandered map, but doing so would be unfair to Georgians. Unfortunately, the majority's proposal is a partisan gerrymander that seeks to minimize the voices of Georgians of color. Our proposal reflects the fact that Georgia is an equally divided state politically, as reflected in recent election. It has 7 districts that lean Republican and 7 that lean Democratic. Unfortunately, the majority's proposal provides it with a significant Republican advantage that fails to reflect the preferences of Georgia voters. In a state that is equally divided politically, a map that provides either party a significant partisan advantage discriminates against and reduces the voting power of Georgians with different political viewpoints. Georgians should be allowed to exercise their free speech rights without being discriminated against by the General Assembly based on their viewpoints. Even more critically, Georgians should not be discriminated against based upon the color of their skin or the language they speak. Georgia's voters of color must be given an equal opportunity to elect their candidates of choice. Our proposal preserves existing majority-minority districts while adding 2 new minority opportunity districts, the 7th and the 10th, consistent with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Put simply, it provides more opportunities for minorities to elect their candidates of choice. Now turning to each district. District 1. This district retains the core of the existing coastal district, maintaining 12 whole counties with the existing district. Because District 8 is the second most unpopulated existing district, it moves east to pick up additional population currently in District 1 and causes District 1 to pick up additional counties northwest of the existing district to equalize population. The proposed district is comprised of 18 whole counties and a portion of Candler County. In District 2, the existing district is a majority Black district. It is also the most underpopulated district in the state. Our proposal maintains the core of the existing district, makes small changes to the portions of Bibb and Muskogee counties that are already in the district, and add portions of Houston and Thomas counties to equalize population. District 2 remains a majority Black district in our proposal. District 3, our proposal maintains the core of this West Georgia district that stretches from Columbus to the outer southwest Atlanta suburbs. The district contains 9 of the 10 whole counties contained in the existing district. Metro Atlanta drove the majority of Georgia's growth over the last decade, and the plan moves the 10th district to Metro Atlanta to reflect that growth. As a result, this district shifts some of the adds Harrison and Paulding counties and a portion of Polk County to equalize population. District 4, the core of the existing district is maintained in DeKalb, Rockdale, Newton, and Gwinnett, while adding the rest of Newton County so it is no longer split between 2 congressional districts and a portion of Henry County. In our proposal, Henry County is only split between 2 districts instead of 3. District 4 remains a minority black district in our proposal. A majority black district, excuse me. District 5 maintains its core in Fulton and DeKalb counties and unifies the city of Atlanta within a single district, and also including the Atlanta Airport, which is located in both Fulton and Clayton counties. The district remains a majority black district based on citizen voting age population. District 6 is the district that is closest to the ideal population figure in the existing map, being only 657 people too large, so our proposal makes only minimal changes to this district. The proposed district unifies Sandy Springs within this district by adding the portion that was not previously in the district, and slight changes were made to the Cobb and DeKalb borders to equalize population. This district will continue to be one of the most competitive districts in the state under our proposal. In District 7, this district was the most overpopulated in the state. The proposed district moves out of Forsyth County and is wholly contained within Gwinnett. It is in our proposal for Forsyth County is unsplit and wholly contained within the 11th district, and Gwinnett County is only split between 2 districts instead of 3 as in the existing map. This is a majority-minority district. District 8, this district maintains the core of the existing district with 19 of the whole counties in the existing district contained within the proposed district. Because this district is the second most underpopulated existing district, it shifts east, adding the rest of Lowndes County, all of Eckers, Clinch, Ware, Coffee, and Jeff Davis, and Wheeler counties, part of Lawrence County, which are currently within the 1st and 12th districts. Portions of the existing 8th in Thomas and Houston counties are in the proposed 2nd district to equalize its population. District 9's, given the shift in District 3 and the resulting geographic growth of District 14 to equalize population, this Northeast Georgia district shifts south to pick up portions of the existing 10th. The proposed district contains 7 whole counties from the existing 9th district and 11 counties from the existing 10th. The proposed district unifies Clark County within a single district and unifies the metro Atlanta area within a single district. The existing district has 2 split counties, as does the existing district. District 10, reflecting the reality that the majority of Georgia's population over the last decade occurred within metro Atlanta, our proposal moves the 10th district from East Georgia to West Metro Atlanta. The district includes portions of Cobb, Douglas, and Fulton counties. This district is a majority-minority district with a black citizen voting age population of 43%. This proposed plan only splits Cobb County into 2 districts instead of 3 in the existing plan. District 11 The proposed district maintains its Bartow and Cherokee County core. As a result of the proposed 10th district, this district no longer contains portions of Cobb and Fulton County and move east to pick up all of Forsyth and portions of Hall County to equalize population. The proposed district also unifies most of the Lake Lanier region of Forsyth and Hall counties. District 12, due to shifts in the 8th to equalize population and the resulting shift in the 1st, the slightly underpopulated 12th moves north. This district contains most of the eastern Black Belt counties, including Hancock, Warren, Washington, and Jefferson. I can remember when those counties were in the 1st 11th district that was drawn for the state of Georgia. District 13, the core of the proposed district continues to be in South Metro Atlanta and continues to contain portions of Douglas, Fulton, Fayette, and Henry counties. The district moves further south to pick up fast-growing minority populations in Fayette, Paulding, and Henry counties. Also, by picking up more of Henry County, that county is only split between 2 districts instead of 3 in the existing map. And almost all of Clayton County is unified within this district. District 14, this Northwest Georgia district contains 8 of the 11 whole counties in the existing district. It unifies Pickens County and unifies the North Georgia mountain counties more broadly within the proposed district. In conclusion, our plan preserves existing minority-majority districts while adding 2 new minority opportunity districts, the 10th and the 7th. It also preserves a highly competitive toss-up district and reflects the overall balance of the state's election results in recent years. I urge this committee to pass Senate Bill 3EX and give Georgians the fair map they have demanded and deserve. That's a conclusion of 1 through 14. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks for that presentation. All right. Questions from the committee for the minority leader? Senator Dolezal, are you witness 3 by chance? Mike 3? All right.
Impressive. Thank you, Madam Leader, for presenting this bill. I did have a question. You said something that I think was very important, and that is we need to understand who Georgians are today. And as I think about the area that I represent, which is Forsyth County is essentially a bedroom community, and most of most of the residents work in North Fulton, right? And there's a lot of interplay between North Gwinnett County, North Fulton County, and especially South Forsyth County. We trade restaurant patrons, we trade employees back and forth. We share the Georgia 400 corridor. In fact, McGinnis Ferry, the new interchange being built on 400, is a joint project between the city of Alpharetta, Forsyth County, the state of Georgia, and Gwinnett County. That is a significant community of interest. And what I like about the map that the chairman has presented is it recognizes who those Georgians are today. It lumps together North Fulton County, Sugar Hill, the Sugar Hill area of Gwinnett, all of Forsyth, and Dawson. The concern that I have with your map that I would just like to ask you about is it pairs Forsyth with Bartow County and completely leaves out all of North Fulton as it relates to the representation in Forsyth, which means it leaves out Milton, Alpharetta, and these are really communities that are separated by a 5-minute car ride. So I'm curious, as it relates to the community of interest in these north suburbs, how it is that you believe your map more accurately reflects that community of interest relative to the map that the chairman presented?
Well, Senator, what the Democratic caucus tried to do was, throughout this whole process, what we heard from Georgia citizens is that they wanted fair maps and transparency. And that is all that we tried to do, and keep communities of interest together. So all those other facts that you gave me probably did not play into what we were trying to do, just draw fair maps.
I understand. I currently live in the 7th, and the 7th, Forsyth County then is completely removed from the 7th, which obviously we have to do because of the explosive growth, both in Gwinnett and Forsyth. But I would also point out to you that what your map does that's different from what the chairman's map does is it lumps South Gwinnett County in with Newton County. And I think that if you look at the leader's map, which keeps all of South Gwinnett whole, and then puts the far northwest corner of Gwinnett in with Forsyth, which would be Sugar Hill in with Forsyth, I think that what the citizens in those areas would tell you is that this is a more reflective, the chairman's map is a more reflective of that community of interest than your map is. And so if we continue to consider your map, I would just submit that to you for future consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Dolezal. Other questions? All right. All right, Senator Jones, number 11, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So from a standpoint of the holistic aspect of this map, do you think that this map basically takes into consideration the partisan divide, but also at the same time dealing with the demographic changes that Georgia has? And can you kind of say how you believe that this map kind of fits those two competing interests?
I believe that it does pick up the partisan aspect of the state. It keeps communities of interest together. We only actually split 18 counties across 14 districts, and that is only 2 more than what the Republican plan does.
And if I could have
Go ahead. As I stated before, what we really wanted to do was draw fair maps for the people of the state. They wanted transparency. That's all we heard from nearly every single person that attended all of the meetings across the state, not only from the committee, but from the Black Caucus meetings and from the Democratic Caucus of the House.
Okay, one more, Chair. And just also one last follow-up. When we talk about the splits, because that's always important, would you say that the purpose of doing that is to make sure that we're basically equalizing populations? It wasn't for a nefarious purpose, but basically do our obligation on equalizing the populations.
I would agree with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. All right, Senator Anderson, are you number 12?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Madam, well, 2 things to piggyback on or to follow up on Senator Dolezal's question, because I do live in Congressional District 4. This map, Madam Leader,
I got it. Newton, Rockdale.
Yes, ma'am. It currently reflects the current map, except for maybe the portion drawn into through Henry.
Henry County.
Yes, ma'am. So I don't see where this is any different than what is already in place. Other than that, it's already, Congressional District 4 is already drawn in this way.
I can agree with that, and I live in District 4.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes. Senator Retz, are you one? All right. Yes, sir. Your mic is on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all. I want to thank the Minority Leader for eloquently presenting this map and articulating our concerns about it. And I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing us an opportunity to do this. But I still have a concern about the Congressional District 13th and the 14th. On our map, I think it keeps it in perspective in terms of reflecting the population. But when you looked at the Joint Congressional District map of Georgia that was presented yesterday, it draws the 14th district into one of the most heavily populated minority areas in Cobb County. and which was represented previously by Congressman David Scott. And I just have a real concern about that, and I would really, if we had an opportunity to really take a look at that and try and reverse it in accordance to what Madam Chair has presented today. And that's my concern.
Okay. Madam Leader?
Yes, sir. I'm not sure you directed that to me.
No,
or
no,
did you?
that
No.
was talking to
Okay,
everybody.
just a
Okay.
comment.
I
All
didn't
right.
think he was-
That I have a concern about that, because that area is one of the most minority populated areas in Cobb County, and now is represented by the congressional person from the 14th, and that is not sitting well with the constituents in my district and in Cobb County. So I just wanted to express my concern about that.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. I'll just make a brief comment on that. I know we're really here to hear the Madam Leader's maps, but Senator, one of the issues driving the 14th and the shape and the southern nature of, or the moving southern nature of the 14th was the population numbers, as well as looking at the 11th and giving it and respecting the core of the 11th congressional district that was already there. And as y'all have heard me say, and I think y'all are coming to appreciate this as well, you can't take any one district and say, well, let's just move it a little bit this way or that way. None of this is done in a vacuum. Every movement of any district has a ripple effect, and sometimes more than a ripple effect on the surrounding areas and sometimes the rest of the state. But I appreciate your comment, Senator Rett, and understand. Any other questions for the Minority Leader? Yes. Yes, sir. Number 5, Senator Harbison? Okay, you're on. Yes, sir.
I just simply want to express my appreciation to the leader for especially the timelessness, a timely presentation of the map, in the sense that it was out nearly a month ago, and you put it out there for pretty good examination time for the constituency in the state of Georgia who would want to be interested in. I can imagine someone who would not be, and the fairness that you put into it. I just want to express my appreciation to you and the people working on this map to make sure that it was representative of the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean, and I appreciate that. Obviously, I'm not a map drawer, but the person that drew our maps for us used his due diligence and working along with us and making sure that our proposal is a fair map that Georgians demanded and that our map that Georgians deserve. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Madam Leader, I have a question. One of the things that we've talked a lot about during this entire process has been respect for maintaining counties and whole counties. And one of the concerns I've got with your map is it splits more counties than the than the proposal that the Republicans have made. Mm-hmm. And it also splits more counties than we currently operate under today. Was there a reason that principle seemingly was somewhat disregarded in the map that you presented, where we have more counties that are split?
Well, it only actually split 2 more counties than the Republican map. And the only guideline that we chose to follow was not just not to split counties, but we followed the Voting Rights Act as well. We consider that, and that is less important than the diversity of Georgians and the preference of Georgia voters. Our map does exactly that by preserving all existing majority-minority districts, adding 2 minority opportunity districts, and it reflects the partisan preference expressed by Georgians at the polls in recent elections.
Okay, let me.
I got it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Number 7, Senator Kauser.
Madam Leader, do you agree that voting is racially polarized in the state of Georgia?
I think we could probably all agree on that.
Okay. Well, I'm interested, what role did your political data play in your drawing of this map?
I think, Senator Jones, can you answer that for me?
I think from a holistic standpoint, like I was asking Madam Leader earlier, one of the things that we're obviously looking at, and I'm not a map maker either, but I think that you do have the racially polarized voting, but at the same time, we want to make sure that it reflects the partisan nature of the state. And the state is probably more of a 50-50 state, but you have to be cognizant of the fact, and I think this goes to the point about the split counties. And it may be the same speech I give tomorrow at the well. You have to be cognizant of the fact of the VRA, and that's going to be something that the courts are going to be looking at, and I think it's going to be very critical that we follow that as far as majority-minority districts. But also, if I could have a question for my Madam Leader, just one follow-up question on the map of the Democrat caucus, the map that you're presenting now, when we start talking about bringing it out to the public to where they can have input, is it not accurate, though, that the map's been out for how long now?
Since October 21st.
To give persons the opportunity to really go through it, I would imagine.
And we actually did use some of those comments in our map drawing. Our mapper considered a lot of those comments that were made during all of the hearings, not just a few.
Senator Cowser?
Yeah, I hadn't quite finished with you, Madam Leader, is that what's fascinating to me is you are now arguing that Caucasians are a minority in the state of Georgia, less than 50% of the voters. But my brief analysis of your map is that you take the 10th district, which I live in, and you obliterate it. You dissolve it and you move it to Metro Atlanta and take it from 63% white to 35% white, knowing that there's racially polarized voting, and you're converting that to a Democratic district, and with a straight face acting like you're nonpartisan. I'm curious to hear what our nonpartisan friends from New Jersey have to say about what you've done. You've taken the 3rd district, 64% white, and you have packed white voters in there to 67.5. You've taken the 9th district with 64% white voters under the chairman's plan and packed it up to 70% white voters. You've taken the 11th district, taken it from 63.5% white voters, packed them in there to 66.31. You've taken the 14th from 68% white voters and packed white voters in there to over 78%. Knowing those votes are racially polarized, and you're sitting here saying yours is less partisan than the other plan, I don't see why it works one way but not the other.
If we could sit down and go over those numbers, I would probably disagree with all that you've said.
Well, the data sheets are attached to our bills.
I don't believe
They show
that.
us the tables attached to them. The redistricting office requires us to break these down by white population, black population, non-Hispanic white, et cetera, all of these different racial minorities. So it's statistical data that's attached to your plan.
I'm just inclined to disagree with you, Senator.
Okay.
Senator Dolezal.
Follow-up question relative to what the whip mentioned relative to October 21st. Have y'all, with the opportunity for the public to review this, what changes have you made to this bill since October 21st?
Since I'm not the mapper, I could not guide you to what changes might have been made.
Okay, thank you.
If I can make one quick comment, Mr. Chair.
Let's see. Okay, all right, Senator Jones.
There actually, and I didn't know we was going to get into a big debate about the VRA, but there actually is a case, I believe it's in the 10th Circuit, where the question came up about the fact about whether whites actually should be considered to be a minority under the Voting Rights Act. It's a question that's going to be discussed more thoroughly. But one of the things that the courts were talking about was, what they found was that the racially polarized voting actually is more so on the side where is more so on the side of where whites are doing more racially polarized voting than African Americans. And so the court said, if you look at when we talk about racially polarized voting, right now we're not prepared to make that determination because of the fact that we don't necessarily find the exact correlation between racially polarized voting when we look at whether African Americans are willing to cross over, whether whites are willing to cross over. But that also goes to the point that I've been making. that's an interesting conversation that now the VRA may apply to also white voters by being the minority, and that's something we ought to be investigating too. But that has been discussed, and that's why the court at that level, in any event, said, well, we're not willing to push it all the way out yet.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Jones. Madam Leader, you said something just a moment ago in responding to Senator Calcert's question that you all had obtained information from the public and that is partly what, or parts of that are what is seen in the map that you presented. Is some of that information that which you and others of the Democratic Party derive from what you described when we were speaking to the earlier maps of the Black Legislative Caucus having meetings around the state?
Mm-hmm. It's
Okay.
online. You can look at it yourself. Everybody can look at it.
Okay, and that information, when you say it's online, what do you mean?
It's in a portal. Is that correct?
Okay.
It's on a portal.
Well, actually, let me finish the questioning, then, Senator, I'll recognize you. And that's the same information that when we discussed the Senate maps, that was not communicated to the chair of this committee, correct?
That could be correct.
Well, not could be, it is correct. Right, Senator?
Well, it could be
Neither
correct.
you, well, do you have any reason to believe that you or someone on your behalf communicated all that information, all that data that you and others from the Legislative Black Caucus obtained from the multiple visits around the state? That did not happen, did it? Madam Leader?
She has the
Well,
answer to your question.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay, yeah, okay.
You're badgering me.
No, ma'am, I'm not badgering you.
Yes, you
My
are.
question was,
Yes, you
what
are.
have you, as the leader, communicated? I want to make sure the record is clear on that. I thought it was clear from last time. All right. Senator Anderson, are you 12? Is that right? Okay. All right. You're recognized.
So, Minority Leader Butler is the minority leader of the Senate caucus. I am chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. What the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus chose to do is allow the citizens to give input. There was no formal presentation, as it probably has been in the past, for a map. We allowed the citizens to give their input and present it online to a portal. If there needed to be a formal presentation from that, then I don't understand why that was not information that could have been retrieved from the portal. But we chose to do it that way so that we, as legislators, were not drawing the maps like legislators in this room are drawing maps. We chose to allow the people of Georgia to present their maps on the portal. So that's how the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus chose to do it this time.
And Senator, I appreciate that, and that provides some clarification.
Sure.
But to make sure that we're talking on the same wavelength, the purpose of my question and the inquiry is not, and there's not a criticism that y'all went around and obtained additional information through the meetings that y'all had in addition to the 11 town hall meetings as we've described that the committee had. It's that once all that information was obtained, there was no effort to communicate that to me as chair of the committee or other members of the committee. That's the question.
But I'm a member of the committee. So it was presented. I'm a member of the committee,
When
and
did-
I'm chair of the Black Caucus.
I
So
understand that
It came through the consolidated efforts of the Black Caucus, fair count, fair districts, and everyone presented their maps on the portal.
That's not the issue, Senator. It's
Okay.
not what y'all got and how you got it.
Okay.
Is that if there was value to that information, which there clearly was from y'all's perspective, because
Okay.
it was partly, some of that information was used in drawing the map that y'all are going to ask us to pass. Why wasn't that information communicated to me as the chair so that we could have disseminated it to the committee so we could have considered it in drawing our maps?
So I'm not sure if the information from the portal was used for for the Senate Democratic Caucus map.
Okay, I think the leader made clear that in fact that information was part of what went into the formation of
okay,
the maps
so
that y'all
then she used
presented.
the
So
por-
she's already said that.
Okay,
Yes,
so then
ma'am.
they used the portal, the information from the portal.
Who used the portal?
The public information from the portal
Okay.
was obviously it's
Okay,
used in the map.
that's a different issue, but that's okay. Thank you, Senator. Any other questions for Madam Leader?
It wasn't a question, but I would imagine if I make one comment,
Yes.
number 11, on this issue here, because I think it's important, as the chair lady of the Black Caucus says, if it was a public portal that was used. In other words, I think we're getting an impression that this was somewhere behind the scenes, which is our public is concerned about the maps that have been presented to actually be passed, that they have not had the opportunity to participate. So what Madam Chair is saying is that this was an opportunity for the public really to actually really integrate their thoughts into this, and so it's a public portal that anyone could go access to, including anyone who is drawing these particular maps, and say we want to incorporate this particular information. It's probably the most open part that we've actually had of this process, quite frankly, that she had this, the Black Caucus had this open portal that persons could actually go gather that information from. It would even be more open, I guess, than even when the persons here from who tout the Princeton study and things of that nature. We weren't that's not open. So the most open aspect of this whole process has been what was developed by the Black Caucus, that anyone could have went to and said, let's take that data and let's look at it and go forward with it.
Thank you, Senator Jones. That, again, is not the issue. The issue and the question does not relate to how y'all conducted obtaining that information. It is that if you are going to come to this committee and say that those data points are important, that they are relevant, that they ought to be considered by the committee, that it's so important that it included things that went into this map, those should have been shared with the entire committee, or certainly the Republican caucus. And that's what was not done. And so the divide and the disconnect is to, on the one hand, say that that information is important. It's important enough, it is drivers and considerers of our map, but it wasn't important enough to you to share it with the other members of the committee. That would be the chair. So, did you have a?
Yes.
Yes. Are you 5?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As a point of clarification, and I believe the redundancy of the meetings we held, and when I say redundancy, I mean the input from people from various cities across the state, in Athens and Columbus, and we found over and over again the same people were at most of the meeting, and they gave most of the input. These same people presented the information to the caucus. So by way of the fact that the caucus got the information, we got the same information, so I would submit that we were presented that information from the public per se, not necessarily in a package presented in a bundle from the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. So that would be my input regarding that.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Anderson, still 12, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Still 12.
All right.
The number of government in order. So to piggyback on Senator Harbison, if that information was from the portal and the House, the Democratic Caucus received that information, that information is in there. The map that was online portal, that information is there, so it has been submitted through that map. Secondly, I want to say that we went to areas where the joint committees did not go, specifically because we wanted that those voices included in this process. So the information is submitted in that map. If you want even more details, then I can give you the portal, or we can look at it together to see what information specifically that you want to review. But it's in that map.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. Just final comment on that point is I wish that had been provided to us before the morning of the last hearing on the day we're expected to take a vote.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Because we're getting that like 3 hours before too, so I guess.
Senator, it's not the timing of the map, it's the transmittal of the information to us that y'all are telling us is valuable. You're also telling us that y'all went to cities that we didn't go to as a committee so that you got, hold on please, so that y'all got additional information that's valuable, but it wasn't transmitted to us or asked of us and presented in the map that y'all presented. Yes, ma'am, I understand. All right. Any other questions for the minority leader on her map? Anything else? Okay, very good. All right, we will move to public comment now. David Garcia.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm David Garcia, and I work for an organization named Galileo Impact Fund, and we advocate for the Latino community throughout the state of Georgia. Excuse me. And I want to talk to you about the Georgia Unity Maps previously distributed to the House and Senate redistricting committees, and which were published on the web at georgiaunitymaps.org. Demonstrated that the legislature could have increased the number of congressional districts to more accurately reflect the increasing diversity of the state based upon the 2020 census results by drawing 7 or 8 majority-minority congressional districts, depending upon whether the maps were based upon total population, VAP, registered voters, or CVAP. The majority party chose not to increase majority-minority districts in the new congressional map. Instead, the new congressional map cracks and packs populations of people of color, dilutes minority voting strength, and racially gerrymanders districts to make it more difficult, if not impossible, for voters of color to elect candidates of choice. Some of the most egregious mapping decisions include Congressional District 6. In drawing the 6th congressional district, the white percentage of population in the district was increased. The district in the new congressional map goes from about 55% white by 2020 population to over 63% white with the additions of Cherokee, Forsyth, and Dawson counties. These counties are majority white and have little in common with the communities of interest in the current Congressional District 6 map. This makes it unlikely that voters of color will be able to continue to elect a candidate of choice in this district, such as Black Congresswoman Lucy McBath, who was previously the minority preferred candidate in the district. Congressional Districts 13 and 14, Black voters and other voters of color in Cobb County, including those in the majority-minority cities of Marietta and Smyrna, are denied the ability to elect a candidate of their choice in the joint congressional map. The center of the county and the numerous cities along the I-75 are paired with majority-white Cherokee, Bartow, and Pickens counties to make a majority-white district. Minority voters in the south of the county are abnormally packed into the Clayton County-based Congressional District 13. Approximately 70,000 people, 2/3 of which are people of color and the majority of which were previously in the majority-minority Congressional District 13, are denied a voice by their placement within the majority-white Congressional District 14. The coalition's unity map demonstrates that opting not to crack the I-75 cities would allow for there to be a 5th majority-minority seat for voters of color inside the Atlanta metro area, specifically in the west suburbs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Giovanni Serrano.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to say thank you for allowing me the time to come speak. I just want to thank everybody who's sitting down here, every member of this committee that has put the work forward in this redistricting process. I know how difficult it can be. I got involved for the first time this year, and drawing those districts, it takes some work. However, I just want to share a little bit of our experience through our canvassing. We mobilized the Latinos voter throughout the entire state of Georgia. And something that we noticed is that Georgia voters were dissatisfied and unmotivated to get out to vote. When their districts, congressional districts, local districts, elections are defined, even before true democracy can take place. As Georgians, we love competition. It challenges us to become better, and that is what we want to be reflected in our elections. We do not want comfortable elected officials who claim victory before his constituents cast their vote at the elections. Comfortably elected officials become arrogant and don't actively listen to constituents. Sneeze, because they know their spot is guaranteed for the next upcoming term. They should not remain in office because they are failing to put the work forward to benefit not only just a few, but all of Georgians. The Georgia demographics are changing, and so it will be all these people who are sitting down in this committee, and everybody in the Georgia General Assembly. If you really got what it takes to stay in our seats, the drawing districts that give everybody a chance to elect candidates on equal terms should not be an issue. If you have put the work forward to represent us, then you will be back in office. and there is no need to move things around to benefit your reelection. Through redistricting, because that will not be democracy no more. We ask that you reconsider maps that clearly represent us and not any party system. Our districts do not belong to any party but the people of Georgia. Or are we just too afraid of the power of the new majority in Georgia? That we have to decrease the voting power of African American voters in historic Black districts? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Julie Bolin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking my testimony today. My name is Julie Bolin, and I'm the Redistricting Chair for the League of Women Voters of Georgia. The League's mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. The State League and our local chapters have been working over the past 3 years to educate Georgia voters about redistricting and why it's important. Here we are, near the end of the long redistricting process, and I'm exhausted, and I bet you are too. Throughout this process, the League's biggest concern has been the lack of transparency. Georgians want a fair, transparent redistricting process that results in maps that respond to the needs of the citizens over those of political parties and politicians. We're concerned that there's been insufficient time for the maps to be reviewed and very little information about the methods and criteria you use to draw the maps. Georgians have the right to understand your reasoning in drawing new district lines, how those new district lines serve the interests of the people of Georgia, and how they impact the representation of minorities and women. Since you started having hearings over the summer, we and our fellow Georgians have asked repeatedly for fairness, more opportunities for public input and transparency. But what we got was very little time to review proposed maps, no opportunity to offer alternative maps. You allowed us to provide comments without seeing maps, but you never let the public ask you questions and get answers about your processes and your reasoning in drawing the district lines. We're also concerned the new maps didn't adequately account for the changes that have taken place in Georgia's population over the past 10 years. As we've talked about a lot, nearly 1 million new Georgians have been added, and the majority were people of color living in urban areas. The new Senate map makes the district of the first Asian American senator in Georgia much harder for her to hold. In addition, the 6th Congressional District has been altered dramatically. It's almost impossible for the female African American House member to hold her seat. And this is something that really bothers me and lots of women in Georgia. If you look at our legislature, women are terribly underrepresented, and minority women are underrepresented. And now it feels like you're targeting women who are saying things you don't like or representing things that you don't like as the majority male legislature. The proposed congressional map seems to pack minority voters into fewer districts and cracks minority voters into conservative districts, reducing the impact of their vote. We've talked a lot about previous attempts to gerrymander in Georgia, and it's true that the Democrats gerrymandered state districts in the past. But the practice is wrong. It's still wrong, and it undermines democracy. Continuing this unethical practice is nothing to celebrate. I wish there was as much enthusiasm for representing the interests of all of us who vote and pay taxes in this state. And we remain unconvinced that the proposed maps serve the interest of all the citizens of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, okay, number 10, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. About how many times in this process, going back to the listening sessions, to these committee meetings of all 3 levels of MAP, have you discussed how we have come to the districts, all the different aspects that come into creating districts, how many times do you think, if you were guesstimating, you've said, and the reason I'm asking, because we've had multiple people come up and say, we don't understand because y'all haven't said. And at some point, I'm wondering, it's not that we haven't said, are they listening? So just a guesstimate.
Yeah, Mr. Leader, it would be a very high number. Quite frankly, as I sit here this morning, I don't know that I could put a number on that, given the multiple meetings around the state, the multiple times we interfaced with the public, the multiple times that we gave groups an opportunity to address us. And that all predates before we started special session some 3 weeks ago, and plus everything else that we've done in this process.
And if I'm not mistaken, isn't it still on the legislative website, the entire process that y'all, the video that y'all gave before each listening session around the state, is that not still public?
I believe it is, yes. It's still there, that explains the process that we expected to follow, and I believe we have in fact followed that very process.
So we can put that to bed, that we have not shared how we've come up.
Mr. Leader, we certainly should have. For anyone that's listened to any part of what we've said, that certainly should be the case.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Ken Lawler.
Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. I'm with Fair Districts Georgia, as you know. I'll skip the intro since we had a lot of that yesterday. What I'd like to do today is address my comments to the map that Madam Leader presented, compare it a little bit to the map that we saw yesterday, and then talk about kind of our conclusion from the whole thing. And yes, you're going to hear the word Princeton again, but this may be my last chance to say these words to this committee, so I'm going to take advantage of that. We spoke yesterday about just as a backdrop to understanding the maps from a partisan balance point of view, that our benchmarks showed that the partisan balance in Georgia has narrowed over the last 10 years, and that the election results for Congress reflect that, meaning we've landed at an 8 Republican, 6 Democrat delegation. As I said yesterday, that seems to be the ideal point in terms of all of our benchmarks. We have in front of us two maps. We have in front of us the map from the committee yesterday, which was a 9-5 Republican Democrat map, and now we have a map from Madam Leader, which is 7-7. We, Fair Districts, frankly, are not enamored with either of those outcomes. We're hoping for an A. The committee's map received a C from Princeton yesterday. The Madam Leader's map has been scored as a B. And I can talk about why that difference is. But frankly, we're hoping for an A, because an A map, which would be in the 8-6 range, would clearly reflect, in our view, and in our statistical view, based on math, the best representation of Georgia's voters, their political preferences as they exist today. That's what we believe is the best single answer. And we know how we can get there, and I'll get to that in a second. So in terms of addressing some of the specifics, I talked yesterday about the specific points about the committee's map. Let me address the map that was presented this morning. In this map from the Democratic Caucus, there is one competitive district. We had 0 yesterday, so that's slight advantage there. Our view of the two maps, again, yesterday I said that when we look at the district-by-district distribution of voters, we saw a lot more packing and cracking of voters in the committee map. We see a little less of that in this map. Both of these maps do not do a good job of preserving the core of certain districts. We made this graph yesterday. I don't have a copy for you, but we looked at, in the committee map, what percent of the voters were moved out of a district to form the new districts. And we know you have to do some of that. The analogy that I used yesterday was you have a lumpy dough that you're trying to roll out and make it flat, right? So there's going to be change across every district. But when you look at where the changes were made, the single most, the committee's map, the one we saw yesterday, over 45% of the population was moved out of that district, when in reality, to preserve that district, if you wanted to preserve the core, with only 657 excess voters, you could have done as little as 1/10%. You're going to have to do a little bit more than that because of the dough rolling. But when you move 45% of the population out of that district to form other districts, it's really difficult to buy the sales pitch that we're preserving the core. Same thing is true in the 7th. Other 7th had about 39% moved out. 10% of that district had to be moved because it was just way overpopulated, the 7th. but an additional 39% were moved. So those two districts to us statistically look like they were targeted in terms of drawing the committee's map. So we're not fans of the change to the 6th district yesterday, because it's the single biggest change that's flipping the committee's map. On the map that was presented today, we are not fans of what has been done to the 10th district, and I wish Mr. Cowsert would hear me say this. I happen to agree with Senator Cowsert that disruption is unnecessary. We don't have to repurpose the 10th district in order to achieve a fair map in the state of Georgia. So we are not fans of either of those changes because they're frankly too disruptive and they're unnecessary in order to achieve a fair map. In terms of minority representation, as I said yesterday, the current map has a total of 9 districts of various flavors, either minority, majority, or minority opportunity / influence districts. The map from the committee yesterday had 8. Our understanding of the map that we saw today has 10, so it's slightly better from a minority representation point of view. It better reflects the diversity of Georgia. Let's see. In terms of communities of interest, the two key things we talk about, we look a lot at city splits. Both of these maps happen to reunite Athens under a single district, but they both split Columbus, which we thought was an opportunity to be fixed. The original map that you presented in September actually had reunified Columbus, but now you split it back again. So both maps are kind of equal on that point. As I said yesterday, there's ways to do this that don't require all these changes. I told you yesterday about this Citizens Mapping Corps that had done these maps. And I'll just repeat just briefly what I said. We asked citizens who were recruited through the auspices of a mapping contest that Princeton University ran. They ran a mapping contest across the country, found several people, many people who were very, very good at doing these maps. I then asked them, can you draw me some maps for Georgia? And draw maps that hit what we think is the sweet spot, the 8-6. So we got 5 maps. And these maps, the links to those maps have been presented to the committee yesterday in a comment on the portal, on the Open the Portal. They have an 8-6 balance. They all have 2 to 5 competitive districts. So they're better than both of the maps I've seen so far. 2 to 5 competitive districts, 5 to 6 minority-majority districts, which is good. And in addition, we've had a lot of conversation about splitting counties. Every one of these maps splits fewer counties than either of the maps. One map splits 15, which is identical to the map we saw yesterday. But some of these maps split as few as 9 counties and are still able to achieve this fair result. So what I would ask the committee to do is, you've got 2 maps in front of you now. I would ask the committee to forge a compromise. Meet in the middle. Find a map that's 8-6. And we know that it can be done because we have these maps from citizens who are not involved in the political process. They're just map drawers who have learned how to do this. There should be a way to forge a compromise that gets us to a map that gets an A. And frankly, that's what we're asking for, is a map that gets an A. I just want to sort of close with a broader comment. A lot of our advocacy, and a lot of the advocacy from us, from Princeton, from many of the other groups here, has been about trying to achieve partisan fairness. I think the disconnect that we have with the process here is that the guidelines under which this committee operated, and you've drawn maps fair to those guidelines, does not address partisan fairness or competitiveness. It's not in the guidelines. You worry about minority rights, Voting Rights Act, all those compliance with the laws, very important things. But you leave out the idea of trying to achieve a partisan balance that not that reflects necessarily 7-7 or 9-5, but reflects the voters of Georgia as they sit today. Your guidelines don't address the issue. And that would be the biggest change, I think, going forward, is that should be part of the guidelines, is to achieve a map that achieves partisan fairness. Now, I understand that takes away some political opportunity, but that's what the people of Georgia has been asking for all summer long, is partisan fairness in the process. I'll say that there's help on the way in the case of the Congressional map, and that is that the Freedom to Vote Act, which we cross our fingers, hope will pass in Congress, is going to be applied to this map if it, in fact, is passed. That act can be applied retroactively to any map that this committee, our legislator produces. In particular, that act has 2 important provisions that would apply. One provision is it bans partisan gerrymandering and has a specific test around partisan gerrymandering. The other key thing that it has is a new provision for minority protection, which says that if minorities do not form a majority of a district, that those voices cannot be diminished as a result of a redistricting map. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert on this, but I will venture to guess that the changes being done to the 6th district would make an excellent test case under the Freedom to Vote Act. So you can thank me later for the early warning that if that act passes, you may be visited in court on this subject. It's not me. I'm not a lawyer. But when I look, and I've read the Freedom to Vote Act, and I've actually spoken to our senator who's sponsoring that act, and I've written to our entire congressional delegation telling them why this is so important. It's because these maps that we're looking at here could be corrected under the Freedom to Vote Act. And I, in fact, will write them again today or tomorrow when I get the time and alert them to the fact that here's a good test case if you're really interested. So again, I think there's help on the way. I would just urge us to get to a compromise, which is a partisan fair map, which addresses all the minority issues. I think it can be done. Citizens have demonstrated it. We're here to help if you need our help. And I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawler. Senator Tillery, witness one, I think.
I'm number one.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Law. I have one question. You were talking about the partisan gerrymandering, and I appreciate the focus of fair districts on that principle specifically. Just to be clear, did either map pass the partisan gerrymandering test of fair districts?
They're scored on a grading scale, right? And the committee's map gets a C. It leans one district too far to the right. The Democratic Caucus map got a B, but it leans one district to the left. We're not happy with either one. In this particular case, 8.6 is the best score. 8.6 is how you get an A in this process. So C is a passing grade, so is a B, but they're not as good as we could get, if that to answer your question.
So my question is this, though, off of that. You told me 8.6 is the grade. One leans one way, one leans one the other. How does one a C and one a B if both are one off of the deviation?
It's a good question, and the answer involves you have 0 competitive districts in the committee map. And also, when you look inside the map, when you look at the packing and cracking, there's a lot more lopsided wins in the committee map than there are in the Democratic map. So when you add those you can call them secondary factors, but they fill into the grade. So that's a really good question, and the fact is that those affect the letter grade, but at the end of the day, I focus a little bit less on the letter grade than the fact that 8.6 is where Georgians are. Neither map gets us there. So that's how I look at it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Tillery. Mr. Pro Tem, number 2, 3, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Lawler, for being here, and thank you for your input, and thank you for your patience and your diligence on this project. Isn't it true that you stated that we could have moved far fewer people by attacking or addressing different districts in different ways, by moving fewer out and fewer in?
That's correct.
Wouldn't you also agree that every time you move people out and people in, you're not just affecting that district, you're affecting every district in the mix?
That's correct.
So it's not nearly as, you would also agree then that it's not nearly as simple as just moving fewer people.
You have to plan the moves carefully, and the point is, if you distributed the moves more equally, you have to move people. You can't just parachute people from
My
one district
question
to the
is,
right.
wouldn't that affect every single district when you move people in and people out?
Not every single district. I think you could plan the moves more evenly. We have not done the exercise of saying, well, what if we have not sort
So
of.
we really don't know the answer to the question that you posed, that we could move fewer people.
I think I would assert that based on our view of where the population moves are, that some of the districts could have been moved a lot less.
Thank you, sir. Based on your view.
That's correct.
That's the
correct.
key. Thank
That's
you.
correct.
Okay. Madam Leader? Yes, ma'am.
So I just wanted to back up a second and ask you, is a B better than a C?
Of course it is. Of course it is. But can we have an A, please?
Mr. Lawler, thank you for that. And I have a follow-up to Senator Tillery's question. And as to the issue, and I think this really was his question, as to the issue of political gerrymandering, as the Senator pointed out, as from your testimony, you find each map to be one off of the ideal number. So would that then mean that as to only the issue of political gerrymandering, you would find each map misses the mark by an equal amount, or stated another way, is equally offensive from a political gerrymandering standpoint for the Princeton project?
Well, from a pure, I'll answer that 2 ways. I would say generally yes, in the sense of each map is one off. The fact that the Democratic map has one more competitive district means that one more would be in play.
Wait a minute. We've heard that. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, got it.
That's
Yeah.
a different issue.
Well, they relate to each
wait,
other.
Wait a minute.
They both relate to the score,
Okay.
to the grade. Yeah.
But purely for political gerrymandering, I think, as the question pointed out,
Mhm.
it should be 8-8 according to y'all. One is
8-6.
9
8-6.
8-6. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
8-6. Each of the two maps is one off of
Correct.
that. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you
That's
very
correct.
much. Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Lawler, thank you. We appreciate your detailed presentation each time. You've brought forth a lot of information to us, and we appreciate you being prepared. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Julia Leon.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you for taking my testimony today. As you can see, I am a member of Fair Districts, Georgia, but I come today to speak to you as a citizen. I'm not, I commend our Chair, Ken Lawler's presentation just before me, and so I'm not here to speak as an expert. I want to just talk about the partisan gerrymandering part. While the population has been precisely distributed for the congressional maps, the voice of our parties is diluted, even though the split Republican-Democrat is approximately 50-50. And a strong democracy depends on the protection of the representation of our population. Yet, the guidelines this committee passed for your process mention nothing about partisanship. I'm just going to list briefly the topics of the 10 points in your guidelines. There's a guideline on population size, the VRA, the U.S. Constitution, contiguity of districts, no multi-member, the boundaries of counties and precincts being preserved, compactness, community of interest, avoidance of pairing incumbency, and last, any other principles the committee deems appropriate. In terms of transparency, I don't believe any other factors you considered have been made known to us, but that is a different issue. The committee voted unanimously for these guidelines. I'm disappointed by that. Again, there's nothing about partisanship, nothing about protecting against gerrymandering in your guidelines. So I recommend guidelines in the future to be updated to include fairness regarding partisanship, to protect against gerrymandering. I believe bills come up each session called the Democracy Act that cover some of this. Maybe it can get a hearing this next legislative session. Alternatively, a citizens commission is another way to do this, and that would relieve the legislators of their conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? No questions. Thank you. Mr. John Moy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, Minority Leader Butler. Good morning, distinguished members of the committee. And Ken, I'm not a lawyer either. I only play one in television from time to time, but you're in good company. Mr. Chairman, I just want to, everything's really been said. I really don't think there's any more that can be said, but I just wanted to, just for point of order, just point of information, if I could just share with you this quick story, if it makes any sense at all. So just to set the stage, it's September 17th, 1787, and the delegates are at Constitution Hall in Philadelphia. And they're ratifying the Constitution of the United States. And Dr. Franklin is leaving, Ben Franklin is leaving Constitution Hall. And someone says to him, says, Dr. Franklin, what do we have? What kind of government do we have? And Franklin says, a republic, if you can keep it. A republic, if you can keep it. And really, that's really why we're all here today, fighting for this democracy, fighting for our republic, if we can keep it. It's in our hands. It's in our charge. The motto of the Great Seal says, E pluribus unum, out of many one. Look around, out of many one. One people, one country, fighting for what is right. And so that's really why we're here today, Mr. Chairman. We're really here to fight in support of our republic. We're here for the good fight to make sure that this process is fair for all Georgians, for all citizens. And if I can just sum up, I wanted just to thank Senator Harbison yesterday, if I can. My wife asked me, how did it go yesterday? And I said, for some reason, Senator Harbison, it's a true story, stood out in my mind of what she said. And if ever there was a time in terms of a profile and courage, I think that was for you yesterday. Because you spoke the truth. You took black and you said, you know what, on second thought, perhaps we could have did it in a different way. You didn't have to say that. You could have took some knocks from others for saying it, but you had the courage to say it. And so sometimes, even amidst weathering storms, sometimes we have to have the courage to do the right thing. And even if it's not popular, this is a partisan process. This is a political process. We all know that. We know what it's about. But sometimes you have to speak truth to power. And sometimes you have to do the right thing, even if it means being pushed back. But that being said, Mr. Chairman, I just want to go back real quick to talking about the 6th Congressional District and the 2nd. So in drawing the 6th Congressional District, the district, with respect to the 2nd Congressional District, which is currently in the southwest portion of our state, it's a majority-minority district, needed to add over 90,000 people to be equal population to the other seats. The necessary population was found in diverse Warner Robins. However, majority Lee, Grady, and Seminole and Miller counties remain in the district, and the majority population of Thomas County was added, which is a majority-minority county, which was removed from the 2nd Congressional District. And so we're asking you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of this committee to take a look at the configuration of the drawing of the 6th and the 2nd Congressional maps. I also want to just thank each one of you on the committee. It's hard work. I've been in government and now in not-for-profit most of my entire career. It's hard to do it. It's hard work to do. It's not easy work to do. But I want to thank each and every one of you for your service, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Moy, and on behalf of the committee, thank you for the kind comments. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Moy? Okay, no questions, thanks. Catherine Maddox.
Thank you so much. I had not initially prepared any remarks to sign up today, but I have been inspired since being in this meeting and listening to everyone who commented, all of the work that Ken Lawler did and the other organizations, as well as the committee yourselves. So I'm just going to risk sounding inelegant up here without my legal pad. But yes, I'm Catherine Maddox, and I am a community advocate for Protect the Vote GA. And I just have a few things that I want to say because, again, just like Mr. Moy had said, most things have been said. But I did want to point out that just being here in this meeting and observing how both parties were in a gridlock, essentially, with one another, I do really think is a great example of why we do need a nonpartisan committee to be in charge of these maps ultimately. But here we are. We can't do that immediately, but I do think that today, I'd appreciate your attention of the committee people who are on the front. Thank you so much. I'm looking you in the eye today, so just be helpful. Thank you. But beyond that, I would like to say that if the majority leader, chairperson, was so concerned about the information that the Black Caucus had, you do have the ability to go to them yourself. You don't need a person of color to bring to you a group of colors information. So I just think that that's really important. And so the berating of other minority members of the committee was really uncomfortable to witness. And lastly, speaking of things that are potentially racist, Cindy Battles brought up a really great point yesterday, and this just causes some dissonance with me because I have heard the chairperson and the majority party say that they were concerned, they did favor competition in their maps, and the person that apparently was y'all's expert yesterday, or with your maps, was somebody named Thomas Burnell, which Cindy Battles brought up yesterday. And this is someone who advised the states of North Carolina and Ohio, and their maps or their districts were overturned eventually in the Supreme Court. And this is your expert that did your racial analysis. And so I just would caution you that that seems like it could be potentially problematic for the state of Georgia. We already had to go through so much litigation because of SB 202, and this is a really troubling trend. And the partisanship really does need to stop so that we can actually do the work of government. And it's really flagrant that you're not even listening to me, but I do appreciate that this was hard work.
Ma'am, wait a minute. I need to stop you there.
Oh, okay.
The fact that I may speak to the vice chair or members may be talking about your comments doesn't mean we're not listening.
Oh,
I've been listening to you the whole time.
Oh, I
That's the
appreciate
second
that.
snarky comment you've made. Quite frankly, I've had to text to try to get other members to make sure they know that they need to return here if they're off tending to other Senate business. So we're all here. We're giving you our attention. The fact that we may not be locking eyes with you as we speak does not mean that you're not getting the full attention of every member here, and certainly the chair. If you've got further comments to make about the maps, either the one presented yesterday or the one here this morning, please do that and confine your comments to that rather than
that
just
was
general
my comments were all about the
well,
maps.
No, ma'am, they weren't. You've made personal attacks on those of us up here, and that's really not why we're here. Please make your constructive
certainly
comments.
not.
Wait a minute. Let's not talk over, and I won't talk over you.
I appreciate that.
Let's have constructive comments. Whether we like them or not doesn't matter, but let's not have personal comments about the members that are public servants up here for the purposes of this redistricting process. I'm going to give you back the mic, and I'm going to give you just a little while longer to wrap up your comments.
Oh, yeah, it was just those three things that I wanted to say, and certainly I meant no offense. If anything, I wanted to talk about the process, and the way that the parties treat each other is also a part of the process. So thank you so much. Nothing was meant personally.
Very good. Thank you. We appreciate you being here. All right. Is there anyone else who think they signed up on the sign-up sheet that I've not recognized this morning? Okay. I think we got everybody. All right. Yes, sir. Mr. Pro Tem, I need to defer to you on this. What do you think, Mr. Pro Tem?
We need to get you an alarm clock. I'll tell you what, who's your day? We've been here before.
All right. Come forward if you've got some brief comments that we hope are not duplicative. And Mr. Pro Tem, put a clock on this one. Let's see how long we go.
Vasu Abhiraman, Senior Policy Counsel with the ACLU of Georgia. We fight for the civil liberties of each and every Georgian. We sent a letter about a month and some change ago to every single legislator in the Georgia General Assembly about obligations under the Voting Rights Act and the U.S. Constitution. And I just wanted to read a little bit of it right now. Legislators should be wary of attempts to mechanically increase or artificially maintain the same percentage of black voters in districts already electing candidates preferred by black voters, all under the guise of VRA compliance. This type of simplistic race-based redistricting would likely constitute an illegal racial gerrymander. The Supreme Court has explicitly rejected these types of end runs around the Constitution. For example, in Cooper v. Harris, the court rejected North Carolina's attempt to redraw a congressional district by adding more black voters so that the new black voting age population in the district exceeded a specific racial threshold. Although North Carolina attempted to justify this decision by claiming it was necessary to ensure that the new district would continue to provide black voters an equal opportunity to elect their candidates of choice, the court held that the new district could not pass constitutional muster because the state did not carefully evaluate whether a plaintiff could establish the preconditions. We've heard a lot about the Voting Rights Act and certain districts referred to as VRA districts. But I'm afraid what the map that is going to be voted on is one that does add black voters into districts that would have provided black voters a meaningful opportunity to elect candidates of choice already under the guise of VRA compliance. You know, we know that folks live in different areas of the state. We don't have evenly distributed population among communities of color. But it feels like, given that the Voting Rights Act is based on ensuring that communities of color can have a meaningful opportunity to elect candidates of choice, I think the word equal applies as well. The map taken as a whole could have done more to ensure that in the state of Georgia, communities of color have a meaningful opportunity to elect candidates of choice focused on the word equal. You know, a couple of other folks made comments about the minority proposal and, you know, white voters, quote unquote, being packed into certain districts. But the question should be, does the state overall, would you say that that map disenfranchises white voters? So the goal here is ensuring equality in opportunity. I'll yield for any questions.
Thank you. Senator Tillery.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. I have a question that's I just wonder your answer to.
Yeah.
We've heard a phrase presented several times that no one's really defined. I just wonder your definition, and if others want to say theirs on the committee, that's fine too. What does it mean to have a meaningful opportunity to elect a candidate of choice? Do you look at the outcome of the election? You tell me.
Certainly, when you conduct the racially polarized voting analysis, you do take into account the outcomes of elections. So essentially, you look at whether districts are drawn so that a white majority is given more of an opportunity to defeat the minority of communities of color. And I think that...
Well, let me stop there.
Sure.
So you said defeat. So do
Yes.
you look at the outcome and the something about the candidate that won? Is that what you're looking at to figure out whether or not that minority community elected their candidate of choice? They have to match the minority community?
It gets a little more nuanced there, but I'll say
if
it's
it gets
about...
nuanced there, I'm trying to... that seems like what we're saying. And if that's what we're saying, I want us to be honest about it. And that's what I've heard from the groups.
Sure.
Is that your position?
It's not, no. And what I meant by my nuance was that the demographic of the candidate could play a different role within this analysis, but...
How?
Well, it could actually defeat the claim that a district is giving a meaningful opportunity for communities of color to elect a candidate of choice if it's just reserved for instances when the candidate being elected is white. As in, if, for example, a black candidate were to run in one of these districts and consistently be defeated, then that would still fail a test under the Voting Rights Act, under certain analyses, yes.
So if the candidate were white running under a minority community district,
yes,
you would then say that community did not have the opportunity to elect a candidate
No,
of its
no, no.
choice?
A majority-minority community district in a situation of racially polarized voting does have the opportunity to elect a candidate of a choice. But what I'm saying, Senator, is if you look at the map as a whole, the number of those communities is what's at stake.
So I want to take that and flip it. So if a community is not a majority-minority community,
Sure.
and it elects a candidate that is not a majority-minority by race, because that's what it sounds like we're talking about here.
Yeah.
How does that not flip that entire premise on its head?
It very well could. Is that happening?
I think we have examples in Georgia where it has.
Oh, I mean, sure.
So I'm trying to figure out how
here.
the premise is what it sounds like it is. If you have a majority-minority community,
Yes.
the way we answer whether or not they've had a meaningful opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice is by the outcome of the election. And by that outcome being something inherent in either the race or potentially, it sounds like potentially by the map presented by the minority leader, that it could be in the party, the political party. How that is able to determine whether or not the minority community had a meaningful opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice when the district is a minority-majority community. But if it's the opposite, the majority, the district that's drawn with the majority, whether it be the majority Republican or the majority Caucasian or whatever it is, and that elects a different type of candidate, either politically or racially, we don't say, hey, the premise can't be true for one if it's not also true for the other. So I'm having an issue there. Am I making sense to you?
I'm trying to figure out fully what you're getting at here. I think I can return to the idea that we should view this map as a whole, demographics as a whole, and also different areas. Like, we know that there's more crossover white voters in the metro Atlanta area than there might be in rural areas. So the analysis gets nuanced in terms of where racially polarized voting exists and what you need to do to ensure that communities of color can elect candidates of choice. And as Senator Kauser had mentioned before, historically that's been black voters, but I believe that this committee should take all communities of color into account. So even go past the legal tests and what's concretely identified and what might be more tenuous jurisprudence, and go towards maps that fully allow communities of color in racially polarized areas of Georgia to elect candidates of choice.
We're back to that comment again, though.
Yes.
The candidates of choice. And I think
Yes.
you've told me that we determine whether or not a minority community has had the opportunity to elect a candidate of choice by if they are of the same demographics
No,
as
absolutely
that
not.
candidate.
Absolutely not. It could come into play only in a situation where, and this is what courts have determined, that you can't defeat a voting rights claim if the only candidates that are elected by communities of color happen to not be candidates of color. So it's more of a difference between a necessary and sufficient condition here, if that makes sense.
I think I got what you said. You're looking. My main question was the definition of what you're saying is meeting a meaningful opportunity to elect a candidate of choice.
Yes.
And it still seems to me that your grading of that metric is whether or not a minority candidate was elected.
No, it's not. It's not. It's that can serve as primary source evidence of whether that community of color has that meaningful opportunity, but it certainly is not dispositive.
Then how else would you grade it? The only thing we have is the election results. We don't get to go back into that community and then poll each voter.
Sure, that's what racially polarized voting analysis is based on.
So it then takes
results
and
that have
says-
already
So it
existed.
says, and I apologize, Mr. Chair.
It's okay. Yeah, we're going to kind of wrap it up here soon, Senator.
Then what you're doing then is looking at the race of the voter.
Yes.
And then looking at the race of the candidate.
No, so I'm willing to take this offline because it does get into a nuanced
That would just
analysis.
seem wrong to me. I was just making sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
All right. Senator Jones, very briefly, we've gone longer than we needed to from a timing standpoint.
I
But
think this is
brief
a-
question and brief answer, and then we're going to wrap it
It
up.
is an important conversation because it shows, because you're actually skipping a step, because isn't there a case recently that I think we keep putting communities of color, but the courts have not even decided that you have this quote-unquote community of color that actually exists.
That's
that
right.
votes in a block.
Yes, that's
And
right. And I think
that-
Senator Kauser at a previous hearing made that point.
And so we're skipping a step when we just say communities of color and they're all voting together. The courts have not even decided that even actually exists. But we kind of have been putting them all together. but that's important when we talk about the VRA, and that's one of the points I've been making, is I don't really think we have a total understanding of what the courts have actually been saying. We use this term communities of color just haphazardly, but the courts have not actually said that this cohesive community of color actually exists the way we do it, and the way I think you're even kind of looking at it. And that's a very recent case.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, last comment on this, and then we're going to move on, but Senator Tillery.
Well, that's not the way I'm looking at it. That's the way I thought it was being presented, and by the witnesses. And Mr. Whip, maybe you could tell me what, in your definition, it is for a meaningful opportunity to elect a candidate of choice. We've heard that buzz phrase a lot, and no one has defined what a meaningful opportunity is to elect a candidate of choice, but they all say that we're not doing it.
If you were if they were voting in a block, the question is, would you be defeating that particular community? But when we say we're just putting all communities of color together, that's not necessarily accurate. We're skipping a step there, and it's worth actually talking about. In other words, was the Rucho versus Common Cause case or something? That's what I'm saying. We're skipping something to think that all communities of color vote in one block. It doesn't exist. I don't think that.
That's why I'm glad. I think you agree with me on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Senator Tillery. Thank you, Senator Jones. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for the time it took, but I think it was an important discussion.
I can't believe the pro tem let you come up and do that, but that's all right. He is. He's very likable and pleasant. Thank you. All right, that concludes the opportunity, and for the folks that have signed up for public comment, we've had discussion on both maps that have been presented, the two bills, the chairman or the majority's map, as well as the minority leader's presentation and consideration of the map this morning. I will now ask what is the pleasure of the committee, and I'll turn to the minority leader and ask, as a courtesy, do you wish to take action, or do you have some motion you'd like to make? We got a motion by the minority leader Dupass and a second by Senator Anderson. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion Dupass Senate Bill 3EX, raise your hand. There are 5 in favor. All those against? Nine, 0, the motion fails. Or 9 no votes, rather. The motion fails. All right, very good. 5 yes votes, 9 no votes. Did I say it wrong? All right. For the record, there were 5 votes in favor of the motion do pass. There were 9 votes against. All right, very good. All right. What's the pleasure of the committee with regard to the pendency? Let me recognize the Vice Chair, Senator Calsert. Would you state that formally, Senator Calsert, so it's correct for the record, so we know exactly what version we're...
Do pass the committee substitute to SB 2EX. It's LC 471166S.
All right, we've got a motion do pass, and we have a... We have a second by the rules chair. All right, we have a motion do pass and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing no hands for discussion. All those in favor of the motion do pass, raise your hand. That's 9 votes in favor. All against? 5 against. The motion passes. All right. Is there any other business to bring before this committee? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Anderson, 12.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
No further business. I just wanted to make a point of correlation to the young man who just came up about voting or being able to vote your representation. So just like in this room, we both voted. Everybody voted party lines. That is a correlation to, I believe, his point of being able to vote for your candidate of choice. So we voted maps based on party line. I voted for the candidate of my choice, but this room is stacked.
You want to say something? All right. Anything else? All right. If nothing further, the chair thanks all the members of this committee that have done the work over the last months, and we will stand adjourned.